All right. What's going on out there, everybody? It has been a while. As you can see, a couple of things changed. Been making some moves lately, which is part of the reason why I haven't posted in a while. But in my absence, I have been watching the world turn. And there's a million things going on right now. And if you pay attention to the left, they're all terrible. Which brings me to this question, or should I say this statement: why some people will never accept a Trump victory. See, right now there is so much happening politically that you could spend every waking hour responding to complaints about Donald Trump and the decisions that he's making. Every day there's a new outrage cycle. Every day there's another argument, another social media battle. And at some point, you really just have to stop and ask this simple question: is any of this debate actually changing anyone's mind? Because the more I observe the reactions, the more obvious it becomes that for a certain group of people, it genuinely doesn't matter what Trump does. The response is already predetermined. If Trump does something they dislike, the reaction is outrage. If Trump does something that objectively produces a positive outcome, the reaction is still outrage. And that tells us something important. For many people, this is no longer about evaluating actions or results. It's about identity. You can see the contrast clearly in how different groups are reacting to recent events. In some places, people are celebrating. You see people in the streets chanting Trump's name. You see people doing the Trump dance. You see people expressing relief and optimism about political developments. Yet, interestingly, in some cases, the people celebrating are the ones most directly affected by the events. They are openly posting online saying that they believe the decisions that Trump made were the right ones. But then you look at the reaction from the critics here in the US, and it's completely different. Instead of recognizing that some people are experiencing relief or optimism, the entire event is framed as negative, completely negative, no nuance. And that's when it becomes worth taking a step back and asking a deeper question. Like, why do some people seem incapable of seeing anything positive in an outcome that others celebrate? This is where psychological framework comes in. See, there's a thinker. His name is Alexander Lewin. Read him a couple years ago, and every time something like what's going on with the left bitching and complaining right now, he always comes to mind. He developed a psychological approach called bioenergetics. One of Lewin's observations was that human beings often try to bring their external state into alignment with their internal emotional state. In simple terms, people want the outside of their lives to match how they feel inside. When someone experiences peace, stability, and confidence internally, that tends to show up externally in their behavior, their posture, their relationships, and even how they present themselves. But when someone experiences internal conflict or dissatisfaction, Lewin argues that they sometimes try to resolve that conflict through external change. Anyways, that external change can take many forms. It can be constant identity shifts, constant symbolic changes, constant attempts to reinvent how one presents themselves to the world. But if the internal conflict isn't actually resolved, the external changes never produce lasting satisfaction. And that's where you see the cycle repeat itself. Another change, another reinvention, another attempt to find alignment. But the internal tension remains. Now, if you apply that idea broadly, it provides an interesting lens for looking at modern political hostility. Because what we're seeing in many cases doesn't resemble normal political disagreement. Healthy disagreement looks like this. You evaluate an event, you weigh the pros and cons, you decide whether you support or oppose it. But what we're seeing today is different. Some people have reached a point where any outcome associated with Trump must be interpreted as negative. It must be, regardless of the actual results. And when people reach that stage, debate becomes almost impossible. Because the issue is no longer policy, it is the issue of psychological alignment. If someone's internal worldview requires Trump to represent everything wrong with the world, then any success associated with him creates cognitive tension. And that tension has to be resolved somehow. Usually, the way it gets resolved is by reframing this success as failure, or by attacking the people who view the outcome positively, or by doubling down on the narrative that everything he does is catastrophic. What this ultimately shows is that the divide we're experiencing in this country is not purely political. It's cultural, it's psychological, and in many cases, it's deeply emotional. Which is why endless social media arguments rarely accomplish anything. You can't resolve an emotional identity conflict with policy debate. And until people understand that, they'll keep trying to win arguments that were never really about facts in the first place. So the real question moving forward isn't just who is right politically. The deeper question is, how do you bridge a divide when the disagreement is rooted in identity rather than policy? Because until that question is addressed, the cycle of outrage, celebration, backlash, and escalation is going to continue. And the arguments will keep getting louder while the understanding gets smaller. With that said, peace.